Hello. I'm assuming that the team has started.
I don't think so.
Okay.
But
Is
is
Charlene?
Charlene here?
Yeah.
Rakesh
He
S,
said
I could
he's.
see. Make him a
Yes.
panelist.
Yeah. I have just asked Pooja. Pooja, are you there? Can you make Charlene the host so that he can have the sharing?
There he is. There
Okay.
he is.
Hi, Charlene. Can you hear us well?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Ah,
We
great.
can see you.
Yeah, just a sec.
Okay. Yep. Perfect. Nice to see you, Charlene.
Yeah, good to see you too.
So just wait for a few minutes,
Sure,
just
no
to ensure
problem.
that the live streaming is also working at the same time.
Yeah.
You have not yet been given the host.
Do I need to be the host if I'm
I mean,
not
I can share it for you. I think.
Yeah, you can run the
to,
presentation.
Yeah, I can run the presentation if you want.
Yeah, that's fine. Hi, Sonal.
How are you? Long time
Good,
no
good.
see.
Good. Yeah, I'm trying.
I'm so happy to have you here, Charlene.
I know. I'm very glad to be here. Sonal.
Yeah, my memories of working together.
I know, little bit rekindled.
क्या मजा आता था.
I know, seriously.
We will shut up when you want us to.
Yeah,
and
no,
go on
just
the live
wait.
stream.
If the live stream,
Yeah.
if you can see it there, then which means that we can start. Yeah. But I wouldn't want to waste too much time.
Yeah. I think it is already, live stream is on.
Okay.
On the side, you
So-
can see live on custom live stream service. So we can.
And you can see the title card. Okay, let me start then. Yeah. Hello. Can I? I'll just a minute and then we can start. Yep. So here we go. So good morning and a warm welcome to all the participants who have joined us today. I'm Dr. Srijit and I'll be the session host for the next hour and a half. And today we're going to talk about volunteerism and how it can our mission and how one can engage with an organization like IPPF and its membership. So we all know how important volunteerism is for sustainable development. In fact, the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development very clearly recognizes the role played by volunteers and volunteer groups as key stakeholders in achieving all the 17 SDGs. And IPPF has the largest global reach for any SRH organization thanks to this wonderful cadre of their dedicated volunteers. As a federation, we are effective at doing what we do because of the commitment and dedication of its volunteers and supporters. So to talk about the subject, we have with us a speaker who has not only worked in SRHR for a long time, but he's also somebody who is associated with an organization that is world's leading global charity that works through volunteers within development programs on health, education, and livelihoods. So it is my pleasure to introduce Charlene Rakesh, who is the Global Head for Engagement, Partnerships, and Leadership at VSO International. Charlene actually leads the VSO's global work society engagement, policy advocacy, and partnerships. We pioneered this concept of volunteering for development, VFT as they call it. And this includes development of global standards. I mean, something which he's going to cover in his presentation. So without wasting too much time, let me invite Shaleen to take the stage. Over to you, Shaleen. The stage is yours.
Thanks so much, Srijit, and thanks, Sonal. It's really wonderful to be here, and for me personally, I mean, this is the second time in my life that I'm engaging with IPPS-RO. Many years ago, I had sort of come to one of your, I think it was also a regional event, but I had come physically to one of your regional events to actually take a training program on HIV/AIDS. And this was many, many years ago. And I think it was Madhubala Nath and Mona Mishra at that time who had invited me. And, I'm so glad to come this time round in a very different capacity. Of course, I've worked with Sonal and Srijit before. Just before VSO, I used to work for the India HIV/AIDS Alliance. And like Srijit said, I've got a sort of a very long history of working on issues of sexual reproductive health and rights and HIV. So, it's I find it really exciting to be on this platform and to interact with all the various member organizations of IPPF in the South Asia region. So thank you so much for having me. So I think one of there are so many things that that we could cover today. But I think what I do plan to do is to go over a presentation for about approximately about half an hour, where I want to really cover some of the concepts related to volunteering, and like Srijit said, volunteering for development, which is something that I specifically want to touch upon, and also try and connect it to some of the health work and health programming that VSO is currently doing around the world. Hopefully that should provide us sufficient context to get into a discussion. And I think that's really where I think we'll probably get to the maximum value from this session. So without further ado, maybe I'll just kick off with my presentation. So Srijit, if you could help me with the PowerPoint.
Can you see the
Yes, I can see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll just blow it. And you
so
can just let me know when to move to the next slide. Yeah.
Sure, I will. All right. So this is really the vision statement for VSO. I think Srijit briefly mentioned, but VSO stands for Voluntary Service Overseas. We are based initially sort of, I won't say anymore based in London, but we are initially registered in London. We do follow a very decentralized and decolonized approach to management in VSO now. So VSO essentially works through volunteers, and we work in multiple countries in Asia, Pacific, and Africa on three basic areas of work, which is health, education, and livelihoods. And we work largely through volunteering. So this is, what our vision statement, looks like, which is a fair world for everyone. And I think primarily two things to highlight about this. One is the whole concept of inclusion. So that's one of our sort of organizational values and principles, and we'll sort of touch upon that a little bit in the presentation later. And the second is that of equity, that we are really trying to create a fair world, in which everybody can engage and participate equally. So moving to the next slide. Yeah, so we are creating lasting change through volunteering, and I think I'll provide a little bit more of the context related.
Shaleen, have we lost, or is it a problem at my end?
Cannot hear Shaleen.
Okay. Let me drop a message to him. I've just dropped a message.
Encourage people to ask questions meanwhile, and instructions on Scribble and all that,
Yeah.
Srijit.
Yeah. So while we wait for Charlene to join, and I hope he can join quick, I'll take this opportunity to let all the participants here, viewers, to visit our website and see some of the other functions we have on them, especially the exhibition and the Scribble wall, where you can ask questions, leave your feedback and ideas. And for this session, you could post your questions on the Zoom window or on the chat window that is available on the web portal. And we will try and ensure that these questions are put to Charlene, and he can hopefully give you his response. But let's hope we can get Charlene quick.
He's joining in a minute, Srijit.
Okay. So I'm not sure if any of the viewers who need the language interpretation function are able to access that function, but be reassured that if you can't, we'll be sending you a recording, and hopefully we should be able to kind of provide you with the language interpreted text. So fingers crossed on that. But I sincerely apologize for those who are probably going to have some problems understanding the script. Yeah, I can see Charlene joining. Yeah. Hi, Charlene.
Hello. Yeah. Hi. Sorry. I'm not sure what happened there.
No, that's fine. You're back. And that's what counts.
Okay. All right.
So is this a slide that you would want to start with?
Yes.
Okay.
So very quickly to look at some of the key sort of values of BSO. I think I'm not going to get into these in detail, but just to maybe highlight a couple of them. So one is the value of collaboration, which which is something that that BSO believes.
Charlene, we have lost you again.
Of our work.
Yeah. So maybe Charlene, you want to switch off your camera for a moment, if that helps increase your signal strength, because your voice is waxing and waning.
Oh,
for some reason. Yeah, no, that's fine. Now it's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, let me try and continue. I mean, it's quite surprising.
This is fine.
I don't have internet issues. Okay,
No
so so collaboration, of course, is is a key value for us, and
Sorry, we lost you again, Charlene. Charlene, are you there?
I'm going to connect with Charlene. Srijit, maybe meanwhile you can continue some of the presentation.
I'll just switch off the camera from my end, if that helps. Sonal, are you able to reach out to him?
Yes, Srijit, I am. And meanwhile, maybe you can apologize to the team saying that we are trying to do that.
No, of course, yeah. So, yes, sorry for this inadvertent delay. We are trying to reach out to Shaleen and see if we can connect again and at least have an audio link, and I can play the PowerPoint presentation for him. Sorry, Shaleen has probably joined as an attendee, and I will request him to come as a panelist. Yeah, Shaleen, are you there? You're probably muted if you're trying to speak.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think the best thing would be to switch off the camera and see if.
Yeah, I'll keep it switched off.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So we can probably catch up.
Skip this slide. Yeah, let's move ahead. I mean, I think these are quite basic.
Okay.
Sort of slides.
Okay. Let me go to the next one.
Yeah. Okay, so this is just the broad scope of VSO's footprint. So we've been working for last 60 years. We've worked in more than 90 countries with 80,000 volunteers, and we've supported primary actors, which is around 15 million. So that's the overall reach of the organization in the last 6 decades. So this is just to help you understand, the broad footprint of the organization. So next slide. So, this whole concept of doing development differently. So how is it, so what exactly is VSO's niche and how are we different from, say, other civil society organizations? So one thing is that, we work through an approach which is called volunteering for development. Now, there's a difference between, just thinking of volunteering and including volunteering as an approach and really looking at it from a volunteering for development lens, and this is really a key difference that I think is important to understand. So when we look at volunteering, we don't look at it as a separate thing or as an add-on to our program. So we design programs in health, education, and livelihood like many organizations. But right at the point of designing, we look at the role that different kinds of volunteers will play as part of the design of the program and the implementation of the program. So it becomes completely integrated into a development context. So it's not about just bringing volunteers and their skills into the program as something which will sort of help or provide additionality, but rather something which is very integrated and integral to the actual offering that we are making. And that's something that we have developed over the years in terms of what that means, what the theory of change for that looks like, and so on. And that's something that I'll talk about later. A very inherent part of this approach is also the whole concept of agency and the fact that we are looking at programs in which people are integrally involved in every aspect and in a sense become active citizens to really sort of work alongside communities, alongside what we call primary actors, to be able to then sort of deliver development impact. We also look at our accountability essentially to the primary actors themselves. So which means that everything that we do has a sort of involvement and engagement of volunteers and primary actors, right from designing our programs to implementing them and to measuring their impact. So that is something which is very much a part of the approach. And so it's a very empowered approach of active citizenship that is led by volunteers and primary actors who are then designed into the whole program. And then, of course, also at a policy level. So when we are looking at creating change and creating impact, we are looking at creating change at the programmatic level. So to improve access to services, to be able to reach the most marginalized, but then also use the agency of primary actors and volunteers in various sort of policy processes, and also influencing stakeholders both locally, but then also at a regional and global level. And those sort of key policy asks, in a sense, become part of the design of the program. And the role of primary actors and volunteers is also designed as part of those policy priorities, which are determined right at the start of the program, of course, in consultation with primary actors, firstly, but then also, by conducting a fairly elaborate needs analysis of, through the lens of the communities. Okay, so that's primarily our volunteering for development model. I've been speaking about primary actors quite a bit. So, primary actors are really the communities that we work with, and they are the ones who help us understand what their needs are, and then they work closely with volunteers to be able to then, sort of design their own theory of change and what they want to sort of achieve through the program. Okay, so this is really about the different types of volunteers that VSO engages, what we call a blended volunteering approach. So, we have many different kinds of volunteers who become part of our programs, from international volunteers to national volunteers, community volunteers, youth volunteers, political volunteers, corporate volunteers. So really a very wide range of volunteers who sort of become part of the blend when we're actually designing our programs. And they bring a mix of different perspectives and expertise and ideas from many different contexts. And that actually adds to, the richness of that approach, but then also, how we actually sort of design, programs based on the relative skills and expertise and experience and capabilities of different volunteers, which then sort of becomes part of an integrated offering that that we provide. So they are, in that sense, again included in the entire program cycle, from planning to designing to implementation. And then, also the systems that we create within the organization are able to support that. So, that become, that's the overall architecture in which, we engage different kinds of volunteers. Of course, as you would imagine, in the last couple of years, there's been a very significant shift that we've made from international volunteers to national and increasingly community volunteers. One, because of all the disruptions that COVID has brought, and the way it's made international travel more and more difficult. But it's also been an opportunity for us to be able to engage different volunteers nationally and at the community level, and also through online volunteering, which has really given us the capacity to continue the overall transition of the organization from more of international volunteering to increasingly more and more of national and community volunteering, which, in any case has been a trajectory that we've been on. So that has got accelerated in the last couple of years. So this is the volunteering for development model, and I think we've spoken enough about the various sort of blended volunteers, and also the way we put primary actors, as you can see, right at the center of our programs. But I think what I want to emphasize in this slide is the circle just outside of the primary actors, which are the core approaches that we follow, particularly through a volunteering for development approach and model. And that's really around inclusion and gender, resilience, and social accountability. So one of the things that we've sort of experienced through BSO, through the various programs that we've been implementing over the years, is that volunteers and volunteering, in a sense, for various reasons, which I'll some of which I'll get into in the next few slides, is able to really engender inclusion at the local level. So making sure that people who are most marginalized, they are identified, they are the ones who are included, whether it's people with disabilities, whether it's women, whether it's people who are disenfranchised because of their sexuality or because of their caste and so on. So really volunteering at the community level is able to bring them into the fold, because volunteers are really embedded into the system. They are not like staff who go and sort of provide a certain service and come back, but they're really embedded into the system. So they're really able to bring out the people who are most marginalized and include them in our programs. Second, they're really able to build capacities of our primary actors to hold decision makers to account. So for social accountability work, and really ensure that those issues and bottlenecks which create power imbalances at the community level are addressed, and they're addressed so that there is greater access to services for the primary actors in communities, but also a better sort of rights framework in which if their rights are being inflicted upon, then those redressals to those can also be achieved. So this whole aspect of accountability is something that volunteers really strengthen through the lens of power shifting between citizens and state at the community level. And the third is resilience. And we've seen so much of disruption globally, both in terms of political forces and also in terms of humanitarian crisis, and of course climate change and so on. So there is a lot of work that volunteers do, working with both communities, broadly, but then also with primary actors specifically, to really build their resilience to these changes and the various shocks to the system, whether it's political, social, or economic, and really build their capabilities to to continue to sort of have well-being and live productively. So these are the three sort of core elements of volunteering for development at the community level. When we look at our work with communities, that volunteers in particular are able to really build upon, and that's the big sort of part of our theory of change. So this is the unique model, core approaches I've just spoken about. We have the people first programming principles and the relational volunteering approach, which I'll speak of in the next couple of slides. So in terms of our core approaches, I've gone through this, so I think we can skip this slide. In terms of people first principles, again, this is fairly obvious. Our work is people centered, evidence based, effective, appropriate, and the whole element of accountability that we are looking at primary actors being able to facilitate accountability locally and nationally, both through program and policy processes which volunteers support. But then we are also looking at accountability of BSO as an organization, ultimately to our primary actors, and look at how we continue to make sure that everything that we do, from designing and implementing programs, takes that into account. And relational volunteering is really, an important sort of aspect to recognize around volunteering as well. That when we think of volunteers, often we think of their skills and their experience. That okay, so somebody is trained as a nurse or is trained as a doctor or has worked in community settings. So that's what they bring to programs. But there are many, one of the things that makes volunteering so powerful, particularly when you're designing it into development programs, is the whole relational aspect of volunteering, which is to say that volunteers bring all of these various attributes to programs, their ability to create inclusion, innovation, because they're bringing diverse perspectives, collaboration, because they are embedded within systems, and therefore, they're able to sort of work with different actors, mediate different processes as part of that collaborative accompaniment that they provide both to volunteers, but also to other stakeholders at whatever level those volunteers are working in, from community right up to policy. Creating ownership agency, participation of communities, social action through accountability, inspiration through their own sort of commitment to the work that they're doing. So, when we look at the contribution of volunteers in that sense, we are not looking only at their skills and experiences, but then we are also looking at all these various attributes. And when we are actually selecting volunteers and placing volunteers, or even designing volunteer contributions into our programs, we are looking at these skills and these attributes as much as we are looking at the skills and the experience of different volunteers. And which is why if you superimpose all of this then on top of a blended volunteering model, in which you're looking at right from community volunteers to national to international volunteers, they are bringing a wide diversity of skills and experiences, but also a wide diversity of these attributes. And I think that that's what we sort of try to put together in the design of the program. So this is our theory of change. I won't get into this in too much detail, but just to say that if you look at the central sort of row, which is domains of change, we are looking at changes that we bring about at the individual level, at the family and community level, at the systemic level, and at the policy level. And we look at the contribution of volunteers and volunteering for development in that sense. The pathways you can see are right below, to be able to contribute to each of those four domains. And then we achieve outcomes which some of them, if you look at the thematic outcomes, they are specific to our areas of health, education, and livelihood. And then we also look at B4D outcomes, which is volunteering for development outcomes, which is around building resilience, building inclusion, bringing about policy change. So some of the more overarching outcomes that we are trying to measure. So we are looking at specific outcomes that we want to measure, specifically related to education, health, and livelihood, but then also related to some of the other attributes that volunteering for development brings, whether it's building community resilience, building inclusion, building accountability, or bringing about policy changes and creating an enabling environment for those programs to be able to be effective and impactful. So that's the sort of the outcome model that we are looking at. Okay, so I'll very quickly touch upon the global standard for volunteering for development. So given this whole sort of complicated architecture of how we look at volunteering and volunteering contributions, And of course, all of this requires systems, it requires human resources, it requires investment, it requires design, proper design, and all of that requires a very complicated, not a complicated, but a fairly well thought out organizational architecture, and also ways of working, which we have now combined into what we call the global standard for volunteering for development. This particular standard is something that VSO has led, working with many different civil society organizations globally through the Forum for International Volunteering for Development. And it's been the result of an year-long process. And of course, it continues, to develop these standards, which help us to ensure that volunteering for development initiated programs are both impactful and responsible in their practice. And of course, there's a whole system that goes into it. But just as an overarching view of this, we do have this standard now in place, which is able to enable organizations to think through everything that they need to do to be able to build this architecture, to be able to design programs effectively, and so on. The key definitions, I won't get into this, but like I said, that for us, everything ultimately is about volunteering being impactful. And by volunteering being impactful, I think, again, going back to the concept of volunteering for development, that it's not about the individual volunteer creating impact. It is about the impact of the program. So ultimately, if we are running, for example, a program that is delivering outcomes on maternal and neonatal health or on HIV/AIDS and so on, then when we are measuring the impact of volunteering, we are measuring the contribution of volunteering towards the outcomes for maternal, neonatal health, HIV/AIDS, and SRHR. We are not looking at individual contributions of volunteers or measuring that impact. Of course, that impact is also important, but ultimately, when we are looking at it from a developmental context, then it needs to align into to the outcomes of the program. And then, of course, ultimately to the SDGs. And similarly, for responsible volunteering, to be able to ensure that, we do no harm in the communities in which we work. We have certain systems and processes in place to make volunteers and volunteering responsible, and also to take care of our volunteers, which is to ensure duty of care and safeguarding for volunteers, particularly when we are looking at their work in fragile contexts, and which is very often the case when you're looking at programs these days. These are the 4 pillars of the standard, and each of the 4 pillars has its own areas and indicators. So it's a very elaborate process which we've gone through to develop this. And so the 4 pillars are: 1, designing and delivering programs. So when you're actually designing a development program, whether it's on MNH or SRHR or HIV, then how do you design programs to integrate volunteers and volunteering effectively? Again, using a blended volunteering model and making sure that their contributions are to the contribution of the program itself. Second pillar is really around duty of care, and how do you make sure that there is an enabling environment for volunteers to be able to work effectively, but then also for us to be able to ensure that there are proper checks and balances in place to protect both the volunteers as well as primary actors and communities from a wide range of issues that that could come up if they are not taken care of. The third pillar is managing volunteer, the whole volunteering journey, right from seeking a volunteer, designing their role, to actually inducting them into the system, training them, placing them, working with them, making sure they are able to perform to the outcomes of the program, to the point when they exit the program, safely rehabilitating them back into, from wherever they've come, to even creating opportunities for lifelong engagement for them, and for them to continue working as active citizens within their own respective communities and contexts. So that's the whole journey that volunteers go through. And again, this pillar looks at that whole journey and how to make that more impactful. And finally, measuring impact, that, after we've done all of this, how do we actually measure the contribution of these volunteers through their own journey of through the entire program cycle, but then also in terms of looking at the actual impact of the program itself, and what has the program been able to achieve, and what can we directly attribute to the contributions that the volunteers have provided. Sorry. So this is very briefly, what once we've sort of got organizations to take up the standard, then we also look at different processes for them to be able to do self-assessment, of where they are in terms of seeing how they score against these various pillars. And this has been something that we've developed working with international organizations as much as informal volunteering organizations and even local and community-based volunteering organizations. In fact, the latter two, working with sort of informal organizations and even local networks, that's really something that VSO has specialized. So, of course, VSO is an international organization and we have 6 decades of experience working at that level. But what we've really pivoted to in the last decade, I would say, is really strengthening our work in the Global South in development programs where we are actually able to design and deliver really effective programs on, say, health, which engage local and national and small sort of community-based organizations, whether it's farmers networks or whether it's women's organizations, whether it's youth networks, to really be able to understand and be part of these development programs, build their capacity for them to really realize their own potential and contribution, and how do we work with them as equal partners to deliver those programs. And that's the whole aspect of active citizenship, and lifelong engagement of these actors that we are trying to sort of enable through the global standard. And the standard in that sense reflects that diversity of volunteer inclusion. In the last couple of years, of course, we've seen so much of disruption because of COVID, and these are some of the additional things that we've done as we've implemented the standard to ensure that it is able to speak to the needs of online volunteering, environmental protection, volunteer diversity, making the content accessible, and so on. So these are some of the new sort of features. We just recently revised the standard and we launched it at the Global International Volunteer Cooperation Organizations conference in Greece just last month. So, this is an ongoing sort of a living document which continues to be updated. So very quickly, before we open up for question and answers and really get into our discussion, I just want to quickly go through our health portfolio so you understand that VSO is actually working on programs. So we are not a volunteer sending organization, which is very often, which is really the old model that VSO used to follow many years ago. For the last almost 10-15 years, we only work through programs, and like I said, in health, education, and livelihood. So, and we integrate volunteering for development as part of the delivery of those programs. So in our health portfolio, maybe we can go to the next slide. So in before 2015, we used to work mostly in HIV-focused programs. From 2015 to 18, we moved specifically to SRHR and MNH programs. And from 2018 onwards, it's really been a very integrated approach to looking at sexual reproductive health and rights and maternal newborn child and adolescent health as an integrated offering, and looking at it from a global programming perspective. And how do we really bring volunteering for development in the context of these issues in a more sort of integrated way. These are some of the key themes that are part of VSO's health portfolio. We look at our primary focus is adolescents and youth. We work, of course, on community engagement a lot. We really focus on creating accountability mechanisms at the community level, working through our volunteers and with our communities, ensuring there is no one left behind. So a lot of focus on marginalized groups. We don't work with anyone from the community. We are very careful in terms of selecting where we want to work with, which specific primary actors we want to work with, so that because our focus in terms of our strategy is really around working with the most marginalized. And then, of course, health force capacity development, health system strengthening, because we do see how different kinds of volunteers can really contribute to strengthening health systems as much as enabling and strengthening communities to be able to access those health services. So it's really a both a demand and supply side interventions that we develop within our health programs, where on the one hand, we are building the capabilities of communities to be able to sort of exact accountability from decision makers at the community level, be part of a program delivery to ensure increased access to services, create an enabling environment and policies for those programs to flourish, but then also to work with the health systems and strengthen them through different kinds of volunteers to be able to then create a framework where we have a more we can have the right conversations between citizens and facilities and the state in that sense, to be able to look at the problems from the two different perspectives and to be able to jointly find the right kind of solutions. So again, next slide, please. Yeah, just go through the whole slide, all the points. Yeah. Okay, so like I said, our focus, after doing a lot of strategic planning over the last 2-3 years, we've decided to focus almost entirely within our health portfolio on adolescents and youth between 10 to 24 years. We go by the WHO definition of the community at this point in time. All our programs, of course, are very context specific, and on a range of issues that you can see below. But increasingly, we are also looking at the whole program from an intersectional and multidimensional lens of poverty, because we do realize, particularly when you are looking at programs from a volunteering for development approach, that volunteers are not trying to address health issues in isolation at the community level. They are very often looking at also issues of education. They're also looking at issues of climate and a lot of our programs have actually become integrated programs in which we are looking at issues of health plus education and very often even livelihoods. But it depends, of course, on the context that we are in, but we are moving more and more towards creating more integrated programs, rather than looking at issues of health completely in isolation. If you can just go through the whole, download the whole slide, yeah. And this is again the whole ecosystem with which we are working. Of course, at the center are the primary actors, like I said, adolescents and youth. But then we are looking at the whole system. We are looking at health providers. We are looking at the school and education system. We are looking at the families. We are looking at communities and other stakeholders. So when we are designing our programs, even our health programs, we actually take into account the whole diversity, the whole ecosystem in which we are, our volunteers will actually be living and working alongside all these various actors, and what are the interconnections between them that we need to enable for us to be able to deliver the specific health outcomes that, we are promising, in terms of the program design. Our global programs currently focus on the whole continuum of care, the life cycle approach to health, looking at adolescents and youth, looking specifically at issues of nutrition, mental health, and sexual identity, and also looking at integrated programming, like I said, but then looking at the whole contribution of volunteers and volunteering for development in the context of these issues. So it's that whole thing is sort of inbuilt into the architecture of the program. Since this particular meeting is also looking at the engagement of IPPF's youth, so I just thought I'll include this slide, which is, we do have a very comprehensive youth engagement program, in which we've created youth networks in many countries in which we work, and they actually work alongside our volunteers to be able to then, and many of those youth networks consist of returned youth volunteers themselves, because we also have been running international youth volunteering programs for many years. One of our biggest and most prominent programs is the ICS program, the International Citizen Service, which has been running for several decades, through the support of DFID. And that has created many youth networks in different parts of the world who are actually youth volunteers who volunteered in that program, who've now gone back, and we've created these youth networks, and we continue to support them, build their capacity to be able to engage in our programs, through the V4D approach, and then also through their contribution to and representation and contribution in various policy processes and policy conversations, both locally and globally. And I think this is the last slide, which basically, I think there's one more below this. Sorry, yeah. Ultimately it is, our goal statement is that through volunteering for development, we will improve the right to quality health and well-being for all adolescents and youth, especially those who are marginalized and vulnerable, and ultimately, contributing to SDG 3. And we do as part of various mechanisms, including our social accountability work, monitor the outcomes, not only at the programmatic level, but also at the SDG level. And, a lot of our volunteers, youth networks, they actually use social accountability tools and citizen-led monitoring to generate citizen-generated data to then, both hold decision makers to account within the program context, but then also, we use that data to demonstrate community and volunteer contribution to SDGs, which becomes then part of the VNR processes. We've been leading on VNR processes in almost all the countries where we work to show volunteer contribution, and ultimately at the HLPF every year to demonstrate the contribution that volunteers are making globally to the various sustainable development goals in the respective thematic areas, including within health on SDG 3. So that's something that we continue to monitor, measure, and report, in terms of how we are actually consistently, reporting against those overarching developmental statements. So I think that's it. Thank you so much for listening to the presentation patiently, and my apologies for the problems with the connectivity initially, but hopefully you've been able to hear the presentation now. So Srijit, maybe I'll stop here and we can take some questions.
Yeah, I'll just stop sharing the screen. Thank you so much, Charlene, for that presentation. I'll just wait for people to field their questions. I think we are having some challenges in the live stream chat window.
Okay.
I'll wait for messages. I have got a couple of questions sent to my WhatsApp. So if anybody in the Zoom room has any questions for Charlene, I'll wait for that. Yeah, there is a question I can see from Hussein Halim. Are VSO volunteers mainly paid, and sometimes they are fairly costly?
Okay, thanks, Hussein, for that question. So, so for us, again, it's sort of, I have to answer this question from a few different perspectives. One is that when we are actually of course, every program, whether it's a health program or an education program, has to be costed. What we are trying to cost when we are developing a program design is not thinking of the cost for volunteers in isolation. It is the entire program that has to be costed, and and that's a very big difference. So and that's a it's such a fundamental difference that sometimes you don't even see it, the distinction, that for us it's not that that we are costing volunteers, we are costing a development program. And we are saying that this development programs, we as VSO will be able to deliver very effectively because we have the capacity, the experience, and the skill and the systems in place to be able to very effectively integrate different kinds of volunteers into the development intervention implementation. And that whole system is what you are costing, and you're costing the program to be able to deliver certain outcomes based on, therefore, that particular theory of change. So we do, of course, when we are talking to donors, for example, we of course have very elaborate return on investment calculations, and will be what are reach and scale through the program, both direct and indirect reach, what are the kind of outcomes, what are the kind of policy changes and so on we'll be able to achieve through this program within the health space. Let's just talk about health. And this is what the whole program design is going to cost. So that's the way we look at it. It's in the context of a development program. It is not about individual volunteers and how much they cost. So that's one thing I want to say. Second is, we, of course, when we're looking at volunteering, by its very definition, it is about people who are not looking for remuneration. So we are not paying volunteers. We, the volunteers do get a subsistence allowance, and of course, their accommodation and their cost as part of the programs is taken care of, and they get a very basic subsistence allowance. But it's not anywhere like a staff salary, certainly not, number one. And number two, the difference here is also that the volunteers are embedded completely into the system. So, while, even say a monitoring and evaluation staff, let us say for an example, you're paying them a full-time salary, they are doing something, they're coming back to the office. Here, volunteers are completely living, breathing, working. Even if they are volunteers on monitoring and evaluation, they're completely embedded within the system. So it's a very different kind of engagement that you're looking at. So, when we do ROI calculations, we also take that into account. But at a very, sort of a unit cost level, we only pay for people's subsistence allowance, do not pay them salary, and they're not expensive. And many of our national and community volunteers are getting very, very little amounts of money. They are working, largely because they are passionate about the issue. They want to contribute. Of course, the motivations to volunteer, as all of us know, are different for different people. Some people will volunteer because they wanted to be part of their CV. Some will volunteer because they want to be lifelong active citizens. Some people are passionate about a particular issue. So the volunteers come from different kinds of motivation levels, but they are not necessarily motivated because of the money. So we are, looking at it from that perspective. And but like I said, when we are costing the whole program.
So Shaleen, can I ask a more practical question, something which we are often asked when we go to the field? I mean, how do you recognize good work by volunteers? And when I say volunteers, I mean mostly the unpaid volunteers. I mean, are there any tested models, of providing non-financial, benefits or those who perform well?
Okay, so when we've been working, like I said, with volunteers for the last 60 years. So we have like a massive database, which goes back 6 decades of the, literally, hundreds of thousands of volunteers who worked with us, and why they volunteered, what were their motivations, what they volunteered on, what they worked after that, and how they continue to contribute in their respective communities and contexts over the years. Many of them continue to be lifelong volunteers for VSO, in the sense that they continue to be part of our journey. So they may not volunteer necessarily again, but they could, be part of a particular intervention that we are running. Subsequently, something that they might fundraise for us, or they might be part of an advocacy campaign and so on. The point I'm trying to make is that volunteers volunteer for different motivations, like I said, and it is really important to tap into why a particular volunteer is volunteer is volunteering. So it's not like everybody is looking for, quote unquote, a benefit. Volunteering, first of all, volunteering itself is the benefit, in the sense that people's motivations, as long as we are able to respond to them, is why people volunteer in the first place. So that's one. Second, I think we do provide people, depending on why they volunteer in the first place, we do provide them many opportunities, not only in VSO, but as as a follow-up, they become part of our global volunteer network. They continue to receive information from us. They continue to receive opportunities from us. They continue to receive capacity building programs for them. We are constantly holding global and national level webinars in which they are involved, looking at some of the issues that are emerging. So currently, for example, what's happening in Ethiopia and Tigray, or earlier what happened in Rohingya crisis, we open opportunities for our volunteer network on a constant basis. So one is that they continue to be part of the VSO family. And one other thing I want to say is that VSO doesn't even think of its volunteers as separate from VSO. We don't think of them as external. We think of them the same as staff. If you go to any of the VSO offices in the region, you'll find that if you go into the office, you won't be able to tell who's a staff and who's a volunteer. There's no difference, because for us, that's the way we treat volunteers. So it's also about the kind of respect, the kind of organizational culture that volunteers get when they work with VSO. That's a very strong benefit, a very strong identity related benefit. They feel part of the VSO family. They are sort of engaged as lifelong active citizens in our programs. And then, of course, they get opportunities to represent VSO in international forums. They engage with the media on our behalf, on social media. When, recently when there was this whole debate around, the UK government cutting the global the ODA globally from 0.7 to 0.5%. It is really the volunteer network who advocated with the UK government to say that this should not happen. And we didn't even do it ourselves. It was the volunteers themselves are so motivated, and they have their own groups, and of course, supported by VSO and facilitated by VSO, that they can continue to act as active citizens throughout their lives in so many different contexts. In fact, our entire COVID response in the last 2 years has been sort of led by volunteers quite independently, without us even having to sort of go back to them and tell them what they need to do. They've developed their own initiatives, and we continue to support them. But that's the level of affiliation that volunteers have within VSO. And of course, we have other mechanisms, more tangible, like we have annual volunteer impact awards. In fact, the ceremony for this year is just next week, where we sort of recognize exceptional contribution of volunteers. We hold VSO weeks, in which there is a week-long sort of celebration of volunteering, and we have people from the industry, from government, from all over the world coming and engaging with our volunteers. So there are many, many tangible and intangible ways in which volunteers get recognized in the VSO system. But I'm saying this literally at the last, because I just, for us, the main thing really is that people who volunteer for VSO, keep VSO in their hearts and minds for their entire lives. And in fact, our volunteer network in that sense is perhaps the biggest asset that we have as an organization, because they are the ones who fundraise for us very often. They are the ones who advocate for the issues that we believe in. So it's a very strong brand allegiance in that sense.
Shalini, I have received a question, and I can see Sonal has also asked a similar question. This is a question from Faisal. One of the challenges, how do we monitor volunteers for the work that they do and ensure that they're accountable and are adhering to the acceptable standards laid down by that particular organization or an agreed code of governance? I think I can see Sonal is also asking, a question, again, a very practical question. What do you do when you suspect that they are, up to something which is deemed unethical?
Right.
I mean, anything from your, real life experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, again, I might end up, sounding like a broken record on this, but, the first thing I want to say is that we don't look at volunteers different, like I said, from staff. So when we are looking at our volunteers in the entire ecosystem, we are not thinking of them as, oh, this is a volunteer and I need to ensure that they will follow everything ethically, or they will do things according to a certain code of conduct. In a way that I would not think for our staff, so whether it's child protection policies, whether it's our policies related to all kinds of environmental sort of consciousness and things like that, everything that we think of in terms of policies being applicable to staff, all those policies are applicable to our volunteers as well. They go through similar, if not more robust training programs when they enter VSO, and they have to understand the entire framework through which VSO works, what our values are, what our principles are, how VSO works, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and so on and so forth. So that's one thing that, when we are looking at volunteering, for us, it's not anything different from a human resource perspective, in contrast with our staff, it's the same. So that's one. Second, I think, when we are designing our programs, it's really, we pay a lot of emphasis to this. How do we design programs in which there's absolute clarity what the volunteers are supposed to be doing? What is the terms of reference? What will they achieve? How will that be managed? How will we ensure integration of volunteers in the communities in which they are working, or whether they are working at the policy level, then what are exactly the expectations from them. So that needs to be very, very clear. So very often the reason that sometimes many organizations who work or try to engage volunteers are not able to clarify that very effectively, to the volunteers themselves, and very often to the end user of the volunteer, if I can use that word, whether it's community level or whether it's in a institution or a government department and so on. So getting clarity on that is really important. And then, of course, we have the global standard that I presented as part of the presentation that, has an entire sort of pillar on measuring the impact of volunteers. So, that has very clear ways in which we will measure the impact. Again, the impact of the actual program and the contribution of the volunteers to the program and its outcomes. So there are different indicators and ways in which that is measured. And of course, we have an entire system in place globally in terms of managing our volunteers, like I said, right from sourcing volunteers to inducting them into the system, to training them, placing them, working with them, and so on. And it's the key sort of USP and the niche and the asset that we have as an organization to be able to do that, and which is why we now have the global standard, and we are trying to teach those systems and processes to other organizations. So so that's how we do it. But yeah, I mean, to say that there are systems in place and they need to be followed. But I think that at a very fundamental level, culturally, it is important to say that for us, a volunteer is, if you go to a VSO office, you might, in fact, if you go to a VSO office as a volunteer, you will see that you are almost sometimes placed on a pedestal to a fault, and the reason for that is that we support, trust, build capacity of, and nurture our volunteers. They're very carefully selected on various parameters. And, for them, that they are our biggest asset. And it's not like, we are trying to manage critical situations globally, that volunteers are sort of, going out of the way and doing wrong things or something like that, in a way that staff may not. If we were to sort of do that analysis, perhaps we'll have more problems coming from staff than from volunteers. So we don't even think of volunteers and staff differently in that sense.
Thanks. I can see a question from Lena from She Maldives, is our MA from Maldives. She asks, is there any specific guidelines or standards that states volunteers need to undergo particular training in order for their development as well as for the benefit of the program delivery?
Yeah, I mean, so that's exactly what the global standard is for. So it has, like I said, 4 pillars. So the first pillar looks at how do you design programs using volunteers. The second pillar talks about how do you, ensure duty of care and safeguarding for volunteers and communities. The third talks about how do you manage volunteers right from their induction to the time they leave the system. And the fourth pillar talks about measuring the impact of volunteering. So, which has a detailed set of indicators, and, how do you sort of build capacities. And we've got multiple, of course, training modules that accompany that, and how do we support that entire journey. It is quite, it's quite a rigorous approach. And in fact, we've now started providing technical support to a range of actors, not just civil society, in fact, more than civil society, to donors, to policy actors. We are currently working with the Africa Union in 55 countries across the African continent all the 55 member states of the Africa Union to provide support to them to develop their own continental volunteering program, to develop different kinds of mechanisms for them to support the development of volunteering policies in each of those 55 countries, working with governments nationally to develop programs which are able to then integrate these standards effectively, and so on and so forth. So we not only have standards, we are now providing technical support, like I said, to governments all over the world, to policy actors like the Africa Union all over the world, and to donors, and of course to civil society actors, and even to the private sector, to be able to really integrate these standards so that the volunteering for development for them becomes as impactful and safe and responsible as possible.
Thanks. I have a question which was sent to me on the WhatsApp. One of the challenges in an organization like ours is that we have a wide volunteer base. And, how do you use the talent and skills of the volunteers to most optimum level, especially those who come with a lot of technical prowess? So how do you optimally use their skills? I mean, how do you kind of overcome the risk of underutilizing a set of volunteers in an organization?
Yeah, so again, it goes back to the whole systemic and scientific approach to integrating those skills and those attributes in our programs right at the start. So like I said, that when we are conceptualizing a particular program, so we are not sort of saying, okay, now we've developed this health program. Suddenly we know, okay, there is this ex-volunteer who wants to sort of volunteer in a health program. Let's get him into the program. Or, it's not an afterthought for us. It's not an add-on for us. When we are designing a program, we are designing specific roles for volunteers, whether it's at the community level, at the national level, at the international level, online volunteers. Everything is designed right in the program design phase. So we are very clear about what volunteer we are looking for, what skills we are looking for in that volunteer, what is it that the volunteer needs to do, what are the outcomes. Everything is sort of defined right at the start. When that happens, then we then source the volunteers, and we've got sort of sourcing offices in different parts of the world who then source the right volunteers, and it's a very competitive process, and it's not easy to become a volunteer with BSO. So you have to go through a very rigorous process which looks at your skills, but then also looks at and your experiences, but then also looks at your attributes, your your emotional intelligence, your ability to work in collaboration, your ability to manage stress, many things that we know from experience bevolunteers need to be effective. And then once you're selected, then you are trained very comprehensively about the entire volunteer journey. So what I would say is that in order to ensure that we are getting the right volunteers with the right skills to do the right job, one, we have the right systems in place, we have the right resources in place in different parts of the world to be able to ensure that happens, and we have the right capabilities within our programs to manage the right kind of volunteers and the skills that they have to effectively integrate this into the program. So that's the whole sort of model of volunteering for development, where you're not bringing. So for us, volunteers, I mean, to put it in a sort of a crude way, volunteers are not arms and legs. That if you want to sort of plant 100 trees, you get 10 volunteers and they'll plant trees for you. No, for us, volunteering is really about the specific skills and the contributions that these people can bring to our programs, which are respected by BSO, and they are given the same stature as you would give to any other human resource.
Thanks, Shailin. I think we are also coming close to the end of the session, but I think Sonal has a question, and I think we should be able to.
I'll be brave enough to try and switch on my video, because
yes, please.
It continues.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Shailin, my question is, I am a little kind of, after listening to you. So are you saying that like we design a program and advertise for staff, you design a program and then advertise for volunteers or something like that?
Yes,
or how
exactly.
does it happen?
Yeah, exactly, Sonal. It happens like that we actually design a particular program. We think of the different kinds of skills and attributes and experiences that we need for that program to be effectively delivered and implemented. And then we look for those kind of volunteers. We design our terms of reference. It goes to our global resourcing team. And then we have a very comprehensive database, of course, of people who want to volunteer with VSO, which keeps growing by the day. And then we have a very competitive process, in which volunteers then apply for that role. And, then it goes through a selection process. It's exactly the same as we select staff. There's no difference at all. In fact, I think it's probably easier to get into VSO as a staff than it is to get in as a volunteer, because our process of competitive process is very, very stringent.
Thanks, Shaleen. Can I also include another question which Ashish has posed? And this is again related to IPPF. How do you address the challenge of measuring the performance of volunteers, especially in the context of IPPF, where volunteers are bound by the constitution of the member associations that they are part of?
Yeah, so I think again, this needs to go back into how do you design the specific role that you want this particular volunteer to deliver on. So one, it goes to the design. So if you're talking about values and attributes of IPPF and your own principles, you will make that part of the terms of reference. That these are the kind of things that the key attributes that are essential, the ones that are desirable, and so on, just like you would do for a staff. And then as part of the selection process, you'll make sure that so many of our youth volunteers, for example, some of them to get part of our international citizen service program have to go through 3 or 4 FGDs, focus group discussions, in which many of our resourcing teams are looking at them and monitoring them and seeing how they behave in group settings. Suddenly a challenge will be thrown to them, to the entire group: who takes initiative, who supports, who opposes, what happens. So it has to be one, sort of very clear at the designing stage, and second, it also has to be inbuilt into your own sort of terms of reference and selection process. And then also, how do you actually then ensure accountability of volunteers, not just so we are very strict around that as well. So if they are in the very, very rare cases that we feel we made a wrong decision in terms of a particular volunteer being suitable for a particular assignment or a task, if we feel that that person is not suitable, then of course we hold them accountable. We very often we will have conversations with them. We'll find out what the issue is. Sometimes it's some people are not able to adapt to new conditions. Very often it happens that youth volunteers, they are very young people, people who are 18, 20, 22. They go to a community setting in a small village in Africa. They are living in community homes. They may not be able to cope. Some of them are from European countries. They may not be able to cope to those stringent situations, in which case we will recognize that very early on in the program and we'll find a replacement for them. So, but that happens less and less because our sort of the whole system is so well oiled and our selection process is so rigorous that, we are looking out for those sort of train wrecks to happen, so to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that's all I have from the question base. Yeah, Sonal, yes.
Yeah, just last point, Shaleen, you said you have a selection process. So it's not that anybody and everybody could join. There is a very rigorous selection process that you do. Only then people, even if it is a volunteer, people can join. That's right, Sonal.
So, we'll the only caveat to that would be that, for particularly for community volunteers. So with community volunteers, we work largely through our partners. So, it is because the partners are the one who are, sort of in touch with the communities. VSO in that sense is a step removed from the communities. So we cannot apply those criteria directly. So we would train the partners, and then the partners would sort of drive those criteria and seek out applications at the community level, and then select the right volunteers which are suitable for that particular program. So that's the only deviation where we sort of work with our partners to select our volunteers. But mostly if you are looking at national volunteers or international volunteers or youth volunteers as part of the International Citizen Service and so on, then we do that selection process rigorously ourselves. And we have a very clear terms of reference and a very, very hard selection process for people to go through.
Thanks, Shaleen. I'll just wait if there are any more questions. We still have 2 or 3 minutes. If not, I think we can conclude the session. But I'd like to thank you, Shaleen, for sparing the time for us. And also thanks to all the participants who have found time for the session. A big thank you to all of you.
Thanks, Srijit, and thanks, Sonal, and thanks everyone. I'm sorry that there were some technical issues earlier on, and also that I wasn't able to hear directly from many of you. But I hope you found the session useful. And if, of course, there are any follow-up questions or anything that comes as an afterthought where you would want to engage with BSO, absolutely feel free to get in touch with me, and I'm sure Sonal and Srijit can facilitate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sonal, any parting message?
Just wanted to thank you so much, Shaleen. Wanted to emphasize that we really need to understand that volunteerism is not just an extra time spending or something that can be done very casually. I think, Shaleen, thank you for really emphasizing on the selection process, on the rigorous responsibility put on their shoulders. I think we can learn a lot as an IPPF. We are talking about governance reform and selection of volunteer in the board and things like that. All these inputs are going to be very useful to us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sonal. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.